Hi guys! Today I'm here to talk about Coraline by Neil Gaiman, book versus movie. Prior to this month, I'd actually never read the book or seen the movie, so I figured this was a good opportunity to do one of these comparison videos, considering I wasn't really biased towards one or the other. I had read other books by Neil Gaiman in the past and enjoyed his works, and I've also watched Laika Studio movies who did Coraline and liked their stuff as well, so I felt pretty good going into this that I was going to enjoy both the book and the movie. So just to do a little summary before getting into my thoughts in case you haven't read or watched Coraline, Coraline is about a little girl who moves into a new apartment with her parents, and her parents are very preoccupied. She's a very adventurous little girl, and she likes to explore the grounds around the apartment. She visits her kind of kooky neighbors, and she's just like settling in the beginning of this story. Eventually she stumbles across this door that previously connected to another part of the apartment, because this is an old house that's been converted into several units. And she's really curious about this door, and initially it's locked, and she asks her mom for the key, but when she unlocks it, she finds that it's bricked up, and it's very mysterious. Later that night, it's actually revealed that this door sort of leads to a mirror world or dimension of sorts, in which her other parents have button eyes, and they're very attentive, particularly her other mother. This other mother is very doting. She cooks the kind of meals that Coraline wants to eat, and initially Coraline is very intrigued by this other world, and is enjoying herself, but quickly things kind of start to seem unsettling. The button eyes really throw her off, and she's very skeptical about the fact that her parents are being so agreeable, because that's not her experience with her parents in the past. She also runs into this cat that she previously met on the real world side of the door, and that cat sort of acted like any other mildly feral cat does. Didn't really want to give her much attention, but wasn't mean or anything. She finds in this other world that this cat can talk and travel between these worlds at his own will, and he sort of warns Coraline that Other Mother is not what she seems and for her to be careful. So eventually Coraline has kind of had enough, and she wants to get out of here. She's a little creeped out and decides to leave, and Other Mother initially is very reluctant to let her go, but Coraline currently holds a talisman that is implied to protect her from Other Mother. So when she decides to leave, Other Mother must let her go, but when she gets back to the real world, she discovers that her parents are actually missing. So Coraline must return to this other world in order to save her parents, and in the process, she runs into the ghosts of these 3 other children who were previously victim of Other Mother, or I believe they call her Bedlam in the book, and in the movie they say Beldam, but I might be misremembering the book. Coraline eventually challenges the Other Mother to a game because apparently she cannot resist a good game, and basically bets her that she can find the souls of these lost children as well as her parents, and if she doesn't, Other Mother may keep her forever. Using both her wits and the protective talisman that is kind of like a stone with a hole in it, she's able to locate the souls of the missing children, which really irritates Other Mother. She also outwits Other Mother and has her open the door between worlds that Other Mother previously locked while Coraline came back through, betting her that her parents were in the tunnel in between worlds. So to prove her wrong, Other Mother opens this door and is like, "Ha, gotcha." But all along, Coraline knew that her parents were actually stuck in a snow globe, and she throws the cat that she has befriended in this other side at Other Mother to distract her while she grabs her parents and runs back through the portal. Initially, she feels like she's gotten away, but as she's closing the door, Other Mother sticks her hand through, and Coraline, as well as the spirits of the undead children and her parents, have to work together to close this portal, push the door closed, and lock it behind them. All seems well after this. The spirits of the other children are free, but Coraline discovers that Other Mother's hand made it through the portal, and she's looking for the key back in. Coraline is able to lure Other Mother's hand out into the grounds where there's this very deep well, and traps both the hand and the key in the well. And at the end of the story, Coraline and her parents live happy, normal lives, and she's got a new appreciation for when her parents tell her no. She knows it's for her own good. And yeah, it was such a delightful, creepy story. I love the way that Neil Gaiman in particular writes children. They're very direct and frank in a way that, like, children I find truly are. There's this one line from the book that just I chuckled, because this is the most, like, realistic thing a child would ever say. Her dad is making some complicated recipe for dinner, and she comes in and she kind of like sighs, I don't like recipes, and like goes into the freezer to hunt for some like chicken tenders. I just thought that was like so on point. It was such a small detail, but it really added a lot of personality and life into Coraline. And it also made her kind of read younger than I initially expected her to be when I was going into this story. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Now I want to move into kind of the differences that the movie made and whether or not I agreed with them. So the biggest change I noticed right away was the character Wybie. In the book, Coraline is a very solitary character. She's got her parents, but feels kind of neglected by them. Her neighbors are all much older than her, and she mostly kind of just thinks they're weird, and they are. They're truly kooky. And so she doesn't really have anyone her age that she can talk to about all of this. And this works a little bit better because in a book, you can read this character's thoughts, even if they are like very internal. They don't need to like be talking out loud to explain the exposition to you. But in the movie, you don't have that. So having her have a friend that she can talk to makes her seem less lonely, as well as provides a good opportunity for certain plot points to be delivered in a more natural way. I also liked the connection that Wybie had to one of the lost children. He mentions that his grandma's sister went missing when they were children, and that sister went through this portal, and at the end you find that it's like, yeah, his great aunt that was a victim to the Beldam. And I just thought that was like a really nice way to kind of tie it all together. It added a little extra layer of like sadness to the situation, because like this ghost child has a personal connection to one of the living characters, and they weren't just like three random kids. Like there was a reason for their connection, and I liked that a lot. Another really big change is that early in the movie, Wybie gives Coraline a doll, because that doll was in his grandma's house, but it looks just like Coraline. Coraline in the movie has blue hair and this yellow rain jacket. It's pretty iconic. And so this is initially like immediately kind of creepy, but she thinks it's creepy for the wrong reasons. She thinks Wybie's kind of like a stalker, but it's later on revealed that the other mother uses this doll to spy on Coraline, to pick up details about her life, find out what she is upset about, so that she can kind of address those grievances in the other world and try to lure her into staying. So I thought that was clever, and it also gives parameters to Other Mother's power. She's not just like this all-knowing evil creature. Like, she has limitations. She must use these button eyes that the doll has to collect information. So I thought that was pretty cool. The movie also introduces the snow globes early on. Coraline's mom has a collection of them that she puts on the mantle. Whereas in the book, when I was reading it and she goes into this other world after her parents have gone missing and suddenly there's a snow globe there, I was like, oh, that's where her parents are. Because there had previously been no snow globes mentioned at all. It was just like this random detail. And, everything in a book that is told to you is relevant. So I thought that made it really easy to guess what had happened to the parents and where they were. So I can see why the movie did that, and I appreciated the connection and like the symmetry it had. This isn't necessarily an explicit change from the book, but the grounds in the movie around the apartment are so bleak, like startlingly so. While I was reading, the setting of the book takes place more in England, and it's described as being really rainy and soggy, but I was picturing like green, rainy, soggy, like springtime, whereas in the movie, it's just like desolate, gray, browns, everything's dead. Again, this isn't like an explicit change from the book, but visually, I thought this was really effective, because when Coraline goes to the other world, one of the things that Other Mother really impresses her with is these beautiful, lush gardens, and that are just like the plants are alive and it's dazzling. So this really provided really good contrast between reality and this other world, and I just, again, visually, I thought that worked so well. That was perfect for a movie. And I could see why Coraline would be more tempted to stay, where like the other world is so much more beautiful than her own. Coraline in the movie also spends a lot more time in this other world. In the book, I believe she only goes there once before kind of dipping out, like, nah, I'm good, guys. And then when she returns, she finds her parents are gone. In the movie, she goes back several nights in a row and kind of visits her neighbors in all these different nights. And again, there's the garden scene, which was really enchanting. So she seems to be more enchanted for a longer period of time by the other world. Like, the button eyes still unsettle her, but like she finds that there's a magic in this world, and so she keeps going back. The talisman that Coraline receives from one of her neighbors is also introduced much later in the movie. In the book, she receives it pretty much immediately, like in her first visit to her downstairs neighbors, and that is implied to protect her from the other mother, basically just trapping her there. Coraline must consent to stay because of this talisman, and it also helps her find the spirits of these dead children. In the movie, she doesn't receive the stone until much later from her neighbor, and she pretty much only uses it to locate the spirits of the dead children by like looking through the hole in it. So it doesn't seem like to be as powerful as it was in the book. Not quite sure why they did that. It seems they exchanged like the talisman protecting her for like this overall rule of like Coraline needing to consent to staying and having the button eyes sewn on, which also limits other mothers' powers a little bit more, like the doll kind of does. Another minor change I noticed in the movie is that the characters come off as much meaner. And I think this is just like a writing choice, or maybe just trying to add to the childishness of Coraline herself. But her mom is also much meaner in the movie than she was in the book. Her parents in the book come off as preoccupied but not cruel, whereas in the movie there are just certain things sometimes that her mom like says or does that are like, dang, I can see why Coraline would want to escape this situation or her reality for a little bit. Like, her real mom just seems annoyed by her mere presence sometimes. The mom came off as mean, and then Coraline had some scenes where she just came off as cruel as well, like to her friend Wybie. She immediately calls him a stalker, and when she's in the other world, the other Wybie cannot speak, and she's like, oh, good. Now I don't have to be annoyed by everything you say. And I'm just like, geez, Coraline. Like, this guy's just, like, the real Wybie is just trying to help you out, and so is this other Wybie. As I said before, I feel like Gaiman writes his children in this really kind of frank and straightforward way, and that's what informs you that they are immature and childish. It's a different, kind of more endearing approach to portraying childishness, I think, than the movie took. And I don't know if that's just a difference between, like, British and American writing or what, but they did feel sort of noticeably different in personality at their core. And then finally, I found that the endings were quite different as well. Book Coraline and movie Coraline both lure and trap other mother's hand in the well, but the book version of these events come off as much more intentional and much smarter on Coraline's part. In the book, she sets up like a tea party with her dolls and stretches out a picnic blanket over the top of this well and kind of holds it taut with the dolls and like the cupware and stuff, and places the key that she's been talking about all day, because she knows the hand is following her, right in the center of the tablecloth. And the key is not heavy enough to fall through, but when the hand reaches and jumps for the key and lands on the tablecloth, it plunges through because suddenly it's too heavy for the blanket, and it is thus trapped in the well. In the movie, it almost seems accidental that she ends up wrestling the hand into the well. It's a struggle from beginning to end for this scene, and Wybie even ends up having to kind of help her out on his bike, and they both wrestle the hand into the well and trap it there. But oh my gosh, it was a close one in the movie. And I think ultimately this just probably works better visually as a movie scene. It's more action-y and it adds like a little bit more tension to the end, but I just feel like Coraline comes off as much more clever in the book because of the way she sets up this ending. Either way, the end result is the same. The hand is trapped in the well, and everyone is safe from Other Mother. Overall, though, I really liked both the book and the movie. I thought the movie was such a good adaptation of the book. Apparently, it's Neil Gaiman's favorite adaptation of one of his works, and I can totally see why. I think the stop motion that Laika Studios is famous for, it was a really good fit for the movie and for this story. It added this level of like uncanny valley to it, and it's like inherently a little unsettling. I, for one, have always been a little creeped out by stop motion, and again, I think it just suits the story perfectly well. In the book, a lot of the fear that you feel as the reader, or that Coraline feels, is generated by the unseen. She's running through this tunnel and it's dark and she can't see anything, but she hears something running along with her, whether it's rats or the hand. It's a lot of stuff like creeping in the night that freaks her out and thus freaks me, the reader, out. Where in a movie setting, obviously things have to be a lot more visual, and like I said, I think the stop motion fit that really well, and just the visual direction that they went for the movie was so stunning. Like I mentioned before, really the only complaint I have about the movie adaptation is that Coraline comes off a little meaner and a little less smart, but otherwise I thought it was a really lovely adaptation, and it was a fun time. Especially for an adaptation, sometimes I go in really expecting the worst, but I thought that Laika did a really good job with this, and even with the changes that they made to the plot or just adding certain elements, it still really stayed true to the spirit of the story of Coraline. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Coraline, book versus movie. I would love to hear your thoughts down below if you've seen or read this story, or both. Do you have a favorite? Did you watch the movie before reading the book, or vice versa? I would love to know. Also, let me know if there's any other book versus movie stories that you would like me to tackle. I have a couple on my list, including another Neil Gaiman one where I actually like the movie better, but you'll have to stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, feel free to leave a comment down below or check out my socials down in the description box below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, have a lovely day.